Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. And we have two greats. At the table, we've got Jeff Lewis.
Hello.
And on the phone, we got Dave Anderson. I'm Steve Smith, and I've been called a lot worse. Let's go with Jeff. You're in Houston. Dave's in Dallas. Why don't you go first? Jeff, tell us something about Houston.
The food scene's amazing.
Food scene's amazing.
I've lived in some pretty rural places recently, like Hawaii and then Little Rock. And so it's nice to be somewhere where there's some action, albeit, tennis wise doesn't seem extremely high quality action, but it's like there's population, hungry people, lots of people to help. But unfortunately, I got to get out and see you a little bit, Dave. I'm sorry you're so close and I haven't been out there that much, but I'm going to try to do that.
Well, the interstate goes south too. I could get down that way.
Yeah, Lewis and I, we've been probably at least a dozen countries together. How about Dallas? Tell us something about Dallas. We'll get this thing rolling.
Well, big sports city, a fickle sports city. If they're winning, they're in. If they're losing, they're out. And it's a great city, growing by leaps and bounds every year. Read statistics, it's just become the fourth largest metropolitan area. Houston was in that spot prior. But, it's become, from a tennis vantage point, and I've mentioned this before, it's evolving to kind of what I would call more of a South Florida market, where there's a tennis opportunity on every corner, and there's a lot more car trunk pros throughout the city at high schools, at local parks. So it's easier for people to bop and shop, which usually makes development tougher.
You said fickle. I thought you said pickle. Is it really become really popular with pickleball as well?
Yeah, I think that is definitely swept up most of the country, but it's a really big sport here in Dallas. A lot of new clubs, indoor and outdoor, have popped up, just exclusive to pickleball.
But the Cowboy fans are loyal, right?
Yeah, they're unbelievably loyal. I mean, it's just, it's like the city's in depression, needs an antidepressant during Cowboy season lately. They got a little spoiled, and they haven't had much of a taste of it since. So, but I think it's a little bit of the fan and the city's doing. People are treated almost bigger than life.
Well,
and
go ahead. With hockey, just watching the games with the Dallas Stars when they're playing at home, it seems like it's alive and well. I mean, I know they're one of the better teams and been in the semis or the conference finals the last 3 years. Let's get this rolling on. I lived in Texas 10 years, and this time of year, the sectionals used to be in Wichita Falls. Tell us what's going on with the Texas sectionals.
Well, yeah, those were great years. In Wichita Falls, the city really got behind it. Some of those smaller cities, I think, do a better job of it because it's really significant happening, and it's going on right now. At a place, Steve, very well, High Point Tennis Center up in Plano is hosting it, and Ken Summerow, who was there for 100 years, retired, and now his son, Clint Summerow, is the director up there, and they've done an amazing job of hosting the event, and it's spread out kind of through the north end of Dallas, or the suburbs up into the north. But now they, several years back, they renamed it to the Texas Slam. I've always loved the name Sectionals. I feel like it's regressed in many ways because kids are not playing their own age group. Some are double jumping age groups. And it's hard to watch the level of integrity some of the competitors are showing in the matches. I think we all make bad calls, but you can really, a peer cheat or hook or whatever you want to call it just stands out, and it's just become the norm. And I'm just really discouraged by the number of withdrawals that I've seen when kids are getting up or getting down in their matches, and then it's what Dion Krupa would call the injury of the day, and they're just walking away from matches to try to protect their UTRs, et cetera. And it's a sad state, I think. I was just on the phone with Brooks Vaughn's dad, Holt, who we talk about here often, and he's playing doubles with another young kid in the program, and they're in the semis, and the result is probably on my phone now. They were in the third set, but the two little guys never quit serving and bowling, and they actually won a 6-0 set doing it. And I can tell, it's hard for parents to. I'm just like, stay the course, just keep going. This is just small potatoes right now. But yeah, it's fun to be around. I love watching tennis, but be out there all day tomorrow. So I think there's been a lot of changes that have negatively affected it, not just here but everywhere.
I want to back up on a couple of things. Wasn't it at Texas A&M for a long time? I mean, it was Wichita Falls.
It went down to College Station for a long time. Those guys did a great job with it down there. And then it had a brief stint in Georgetown for a year or two, and now it made its way up here. But
you mentioned Dion Krupa. For our listeners, Dave runs a large program at the Brookhaven Country Club in Dallas, and Dion has really been there from day one, 30 plus years ago, helping you build that. That's IOD, Injury of Day. I think that's a great acronym. I remember years ago, someone, I think it was in the Houston area, and he ran a camp, and the name of the camp was, he ran it during sectionals, and he gave a T-shirt out. It was the name of the camp. I wish I was at sectionals. Tell the listeners that before it wasn't so easy to qualify to play sectionals years ago, right?
Yeah. So the old system, I was actually with a bunch of the original coaches from 30 some years ago up there, and we were talking about how clean it was, because it kind of helped regulate skill development in that the tournament year began in January, and players were divided into 3 categories: ZAT, Championship, and Super Champ. And players had until June to jump into each category. And so if you didn't get into Super Champs by June, your chances of doing it were done until the next January. So there were a lot more pauses and chances for people to just continue to build their game. And it really is evident, even from an era where I don't think a lot of people understood even what they do now. The games were cleaner. The game was being played cleaner. People were playing a little bit better all over the court. But now it's just everybody's jumped into it prematurely. And, once they get on that hamster wheel, I think it's hard to get out.
With sectionals, it was mandatory. You couldn't get to Kalamazoo or San Diego. Say, for example, the 18s, where they offer a wild card to the U.S. Open. You had to stay local. You had to play sectionals. It was mandatory, but now it's not. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. The endorsement has nothing to do with it now. So I think to add to it here, for instance, in the 18s, the winner will get a wild card into a 25 futures for the men and women. But it's sad that the sense of pride in the being a sectional champion isn't the same as it was, and I think it's really related to even Davis Cup and some of the other things. The great event we had here, Steve, in Texas, and Jeff, it was called the McKinley Cup, which the best players from Dallas played the best players from Houston, named after after Chuck McKinley, excuse me. And it was an event that went on forever, and then all of a sudden, I vividly remember a couple of the top players from Houston and Dallas opted out of it because it was the beginning of that era where people got a little picky. And next thing you know, the 5th and 6th best players started bypassing it. And so many beautiful things in the history of the sport are just being left behind because people are trying to skip so many steps and not really valuing the history of the game in a way that I think will come back to negatively affect us.
Yeah, I think in the 18s, say the Sunshine Cup for the boys,
Yeah.
the Continental Cup for the girls. Both those programs were dropped, events. Those events really replicated Davis Cup on the boys' side and the Fed Cup on the girls' side. There's still an endorsement though, correct? I mean, but it's not the only way to get in. But that at one time it was the only way. Like say, for example, you have a large population in Texas, which I know, and you and I were out there in the 80s. It was 17 million people. It's probably twice that now. But like if you're from New England or the Intermountain, Hawaii Pacific, there's a smaller number of people would get in.
Yeah, now it's primarily based on national. With the changing over to the L1s and all of that. So it dominating your section is certainly helpful in the whole process. But it's like Mason, for instance, Vaughn, who is going to be at Kalamazoo for sure, and the seating's up there, everything, all of that, the combination of ITF, and there's so many factors now. There's so many different components involved in it that it's kind of become, like NCAA rules almost keeping up with it. But yeah, you got to get on airplanes to get, to get into the L1s these days, it seems. I mean, you just got to play a lot. You have to play a ton, and there probably aren't enough of them inside of each section to get enough points.
Well, I know in Florida, obviously Jeff and I spent so much time in Florida. There was designated, super series, regulars, rookies, and then they changed to the number system. Where in Texas, I know they had major zones and such. But with years ago, there was no level 2s and level 3s. There was just level 1 national. The thing about playing closer to home, in the UTR, where Dave Fish pulled out, Dave Howell put that together based on the French system. I mean, he's a person who did the math, but Dave Fish really was the one who launched it. And the UTR was supposed to be free. It was supposed to be self-rating, and it was supposed to be ageless and genderless. And I understand now the UTR has the largest email list in all of tennis. And if you run a UTR tournament, there's a plus to it because you have a lot of flexibility on how you run the event. But you can see, the entry fee, there's no limit to it. And I know that a lot of college coaches, kids get discouraged that they're not going to get any email or text message, phone calls back if they have a lower UTR. But go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I really thought the USTA was onto something years ago when, obviously the sections were still kind of doing their own things, but it was like you said, it was very difficult for some kids to get in, even from Texas, if the cutoff was 12, if they were endorsed purely from this section. And so the USTA created those national opens that were held in different regions of the country. I think there were 4 or 5 throughout the country, and they were held the month before hardcore nationals, clay court nationals, and I believe indoor nationals. And that gave kids that were maybe ranked, say, 15 to 25 in Texas that were great players, but just weren't high enough to get endorsed. They could go and compete in these national opens, and it seemed like that was a really, I really enjoyed that. And then, that lasted a brief amount of time, and it shifted to the other directions. But, the UTRs, we have a lot of them here every weekend. There's a number of them, and I just like them because our kids get to play against a lot of 30, 35-year-old former college players, and I think they're great experiences for them.
Well, I think one positive right now with the UTR is, if I get my letters right, PTTs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I do think that is a little bit like the French system, where you're not really playing for ATP or WTA points. I think there's positives to that, but there's certainly a lot to be said for being in the right place, right time. The match count that people have, it just really changed. Years ago in the U.S., everyone played high school tennis. Everyone plays, and how does it go? Now the individual is bigger than the program, and
Yeah.
then all matches, now with being computerized. And I think it's so unhealthy for fifth and sixth graders. Their match record is reported. It's there forever. And also too is that the kids know, years ago you could play a match and go, yeah, I know I can win this match. So in the first set, I'm going to experiment and serve and volley the whole first set. But if I lose a set, I know I can win set 2 and 3. But now with the 10-point tiebreaker. But also too is that once kids lose X amount of games, once they lose 6 games, how's that work with the UTR there?
Yeah, it hits it, and that's why a lot of these kids never play developmental match play sets in tournaments anymore.
Well, that's an interesting comment you made, Dave, about just getting on the hamster wheel early. How dangerous
Yeah.
that can be, getting caught up in that stuff at an early age. And, other sports, I guess you can make sense out of it. The sports is designed around smaller kids. It's more athleticism based. But tennis is just such a unique animal that it's just so dangerous to get caught up in that early,
We have a family here from Minnesota and a family here from Hawaii. And I think one of the reasons is that they've recently had a chance to watch in Minnesota, a girl that we've trained, through her dad, and then a boy out in Hawaii. And the girl in Minnesota went a long time without playing tournaments. I tell kids every day is a tournament. When you get up, make your bed. These are the routines before you go to school. And put pressure on yourself all the time to do the routines. Because kids, when they go to a tournament, you could mark right fragile on their forehead. They break like glass. And, I think the one service of the UTR is helping college coaches that once someone is a junior in high school, trying to, have an international ID for their level. But early on, so much emphasis put on winning. How's it go? Your game won't get you points, but your points will get you game. But yeah, the hamster wheel. And then, serve plus 1 with, we've had a couple college players here this past 2 or 3 weeks, 2 weeks, I guess. And yeah, you said it, but it's at every level. At every level. I know the last podcast we talked about doubles. Going back to sectionals, Jeremy Wertzman, who now is the coach at Indiana, understands Scott Lipsky is working for the Southern Cal division of the USTA. I called him up just to ask him. He was bringing kids in throughout Southern Cal. It wasn't a USTA national function, but he was doing it through Southern Cal and getting people to play matches, just getting people to play each other. But I remember Lipsky's father passed away at a very young age, but it was at a bar mitzvah, so that's when you're 13. And I had made a video for him. I remember his father saying, we're going to work on this on our own. But anyway, Lipsky really, was a great captain playing doubles and juniors. It was just the leadership that he took. And Wertzman, I would say, is a very laid back, easygoing guy. But, they did so well playing doubles at Kalamazoo, winning titles. And then they were split. And why I bring that up is that they were split on who's going to play overseas, so who gets named to USTA teams. And I do think that that's another factor too, is that that takes kids closer or further away from home. One thing that's going on in the United States, which is amazing, is how many families are taking their kids to European tennis academies. They just look, well, the Americans are not doing that well. Da 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 da. Andy Roddick was the last guy to win a major. Da 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 da. And I mean, it should be right in your backyard. I mean, it should be right around the corner. You don't have to go anywhere and everywhere to get better. And there's so many different aspects of the game.
No, a lot of people are bragging right now about really talking up how there's 3 men in the top 10 in the world right now, U.S. men, and 3 top U.S. women in the world right now. And they're like, yes. I'm like, well,
I know Ben Shelton just moved up to 10, right?
yeah. So it's just like your standard, when that's like, we've done it, we're back.
But so if you just look at case by case study, I always go back to the Jimmy Connors era, where playing your own age group and add to your game. If a kid's always playing up, I mean, you're saying they're double jumping age groups. They're in the 14s and they're playing the 18s. Most of those kids are going to end up being a counterattacker. I mean, they're not going to play with a number of different options, different patterns.
Right. Just trying to keep their head above water.
Yeah, the USCA, a lot of people think that the USCA tournaments are for college-bound players and ITF is for pro-bound. That's one interesting thing about the UTR is that you can see the number, the UTR rating of these kids that are playing ITFs. And it's like they're in the wrong place at the wrong time. I mean, it's like the money that parents are spending, there should be a formula for how much money do they pay per match. When you say people are pulling out, you mean they're not playing the back draw?
Well, that was the case. I mean, shockingly at the Easter Bowl, which I mean, just to get to the Easter Bowl, such an honor, and then to get there and pull out of the back draw, that was happening just beyond belief to me. And then, but here, they're starting matches. But then if there's an indicator that they're down and not coming back to, especially to people that are below them in the UTR, I mean, there's parents signaling basically to, that's it, come off.
That's crazy.
To try to protect their UTR from being negatively hit. And that it's funny because it seems like Dion and I were talking about this today. He went out to the tournament this weekend as well. And, it seems like everybody, no matter whether nobody's as good or as bad as they think they are, but it seems like everyone thinks at this point, if they're playing competitively in tennis now, that they just have to have this perfectly laid out scenario for them with, the physio, the sports psychologist, the nutritionist, the hitting coach, the serve coach. I mean, it's just become, to me, I don't know whether it's, to laugh or cry, because people are just putting the cart before the horse. I mean, some of these kids, you just, even the good ones, their ability to hit targets repeatedly, and just play even 2 zones of the court, to be able to play the red and yellow zone effectively, let alone the green zone. But it's really interesting, and how I really believe we're going backward hard, and I don't think people are realizing it. And I know we sound like, kind of people talking about how they used to walk to school barefoot in the snow, but if you see it through tennis eyes, I think it's pretty easy to see. And it's concerning, very concerning. We had a kid that we inherited from another local program, and I know that he and his father won't be listening to this, so I'm not going to say his name, but they won't be listening to it. They should be. But he lost first round in this event, and the next day he asked Coach Andreas. He said, "Hey, we got an invitation to go to a J30 in Argentina. What do you think?" I don't, I can't say on air what Coach Andreas answered, but that's the kind of idiocracy. I mean, it really is the land of the blind. The one-eyed man is king, and the one-eyed man is usually just the kid who's winning. Their parents, that kid, and that's who's impacting the game that these people are following. It's really sad.
No, I know when my son was playing pro tennis, Connor, I look back at that and I should have really stepped in. And but kids get to a certain age, and he had people helping him out. But where in the world would he make the cut? Okay, I can make a cut. Well, I'm in China, and I can make a cut in Ecuador. That becomes crazy as well.
I mean, Ashlyn is in Berlin, Kruger.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know, on the live ranking, she might be 30, but 32 draw, and the cut was 18. They cut off at 18, so she had to go into quali, at 30 in the world, and it's tough out there in the real world, and those are difficult things, but it is what it is, and but these kids, I mean, they're just trying to skip steps. People are trying to skip steps, and you just can't do it in sport. You got to fill in the gaps everywhere along the line.
Well, I do think with the internet now, it's people think they have, and they do in some ways, have too much insight. College tennis in America, I mean, the college coaches are going everywhere to find players. It'd be much better if they were just trying to find athletes and character kids right where their school is. If they're in Texas, if they're in, wherever, Wisconsin, Louisiana, Oregon, it doesn't matter wherever they are, but they're traveling all over looking for players. And when I say the insight, then the parents are aware of that. And so they turn their nose up at sectionals. And it used to be, I mean, like Southern California, for example, to win that sectional, or back in the day, in the Midwest, they called it the Westerns. And now they changed the name, but if you won, any sectional event, it was something to take pride in, and it was a great honor. But yeah, I remember the late Bobby Curtis. He ran Florida Tennis for a long time, and once they came up with level 2s and level 3s, people were to get your checkbook out. It's almost like, okay, you have to homeschool, and then you have to, travel. Like you said, get on airplanes. The youth versus veteran match doesn't take place anymore. The creative local, matches, like, okay, let's have open tournaments where there's a little bit of money, and the players would come out of the woodwork. But yeah, it's unfortunate to hear that. Their survival, though, it's pretty tough to play in the weather right now in Houston, right? Or Dallas, or where'd you say they're in Plano? Where's the sectionals being held?
Yeah. No, it's right here, right by where you've been to my old house in Allen. It's right up there. But yeah, Houston, it's probably even more brutal with the humidity, huh, Jeff?
Yeah, I think so much concrete in the city, it kind of holds on to it to where it doesn't even cool down at night. Like it just the whole day, it's just like very humid, very hot the whole day. So you could try to duck it, but you're still going to be in the heat, which is fine with me. I'm not one to try to keep kids out of it. Just keep them safe for the most part, but you got to play in it.
I remember it was Wichita Falls is a pretty hot place.
Yeah, warm up there, and that actually is the start of Tornado Alley up there. I can remember being up there at that tournament many times when, we had to take cover because of it was right at the tail end of the tornado season. But for some reason, that 2-hour difference up north from Dallas-Fort Worth, it was always a prime area for the tornadoes.
College players as well. Years ago, the coach, it's amazing how everything is circumstantial. the coach really, they made more money on their camp than they did from salary. And the camp used to be important to coaches. And, the many college players would work their camps. And now I would say most college players, they just hit the road. They're like, and I don't really think that that's the best way to go about it. Well, you're working on your, winning points while you're in college. Maybe for this, a very, very few. But I think if you're in college, you're in college and take it, like, okay, how good a year are you going to have next year? How good a year is your senior year going to be? What's your win-loss record going to be? Marv Levy, football coach, blossom where you planted. There's no place you'd rather be than where you are right now. And, with avoiding tournaments. I think that was something that used to take place where they used the term people would go into hiding. They would do well in the beginning of the year. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think people avoid if someone is playing ITFs and they're playing up? I mean, they avoid stepping down in the reality check.
Yeah, I definitely do. I was talking about that last week, how some common challenges that I think I've seen come down the pipeline here in the last 10 years or so is that, people looking to, they think it's easy to play somebody that, and I'm not saying this an example, but, if you take a player like a 15-year-old, 16-year-old who's a, 12-ish UTR, and it's easy for them to duck the junior scene and suddenly just try to do the typical U.S. junior scene, and suddenly they're just an ITF animal, and they're a maybe futures, maybe into the PTTs, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, some kids that might be their true destiny. But I found that the same kids who do that kind of stuff are the kids who use technical work as a crutch. And I think that's another topic for discussion sometime, because we were talking about this, Coach Andreas and I and a few others, and I think that I see all ends of it, right? And I think you've said it a million times, Steve. Every player is an individual case study, and so I think our job as coaches is to figure out, okay, what plan really matches this person. A might need more tournaments, anything and everything, and then B might need a dry spell and get the grip right on the backhand side. But I think that people just don't put it on the line at the end of the day and just take their licks. There's just always a lot of belly aching and a lot of reinventing of the wheel anytime there's a loss. And I mean, my gosh, if we couldn't learn anything from the French Open, I just listen to the speeches of people like Sinner after the matches, and listen to his father. His father was working, and the way he just articulated that, where he was talking about his dad couldn't be there because he had to work, and he goes, he may be watching on TV, I don't know. He goes, but it really doesn't matter. People are hanging on fences watching their kids practice. I just don't get that. I mean,
Jeff said the same thing today about you just said, taking your licks. Yeah, we say, sum up psychology in one word, feelings, and then major problem is avoidance. A lot of American kids will avoid playing on clay. They certainly, I don't like doubles. I don't like going to the net. Do just the opposite of what you want to do. I think a great Jimmy Connors quote is play where the pressure is. And, the kid who's always playing up, so they have a built-in excuse. I'm 14, but I'm playing 18s. And, play anybody and everybody. Don't be a tennis snob.
Yeah, but I think to go back what Dave was just saying, and I think what you say a lot is, I'm just always really surprised the entry point into programs for, not just higher level players, but anyone that, typically enter a program. It's like, let me watch you play. All right, you're at this level, go go to that court. Now you're in the program.
Yeah, right.
And I think, and Steve probably doesn't agree with this, but when it comes to parent behavior, I think you actually put yourself in good position with parents when you film, skills test, and sit down and talk and make a plan and say, here's what we think where your kid is, here's what they need to do, and this is the plan. And I don't know about like maybe larger academies or anything like that, but I've almost never see that done. And I feel like it takes out so much of the emotion between the parent-coach relationship. Some parents will see it and they'll just disagree and they'll leave.
Right.
So it doesn't really have to be this emotional battle. It's just this is our plan for your kid, and what do you think? And they're either on board with it or not. So from that time forward, you're like, no. You remember the plan we made?
Yeah.
So I think that making that process logical upon entry, it really is an emotional anchor for even parents, but you have uneducated coaches. The only thing worse than an uneducated coach is an uneducated parent, because then it's just all emotions for them and their kid. And I think that's one thing I certainly took out of being a part of what you were doing, Steve, is just the assessment process, I think.
No, we do that. Actually, Jeff put it together years ago. It was fun for me for so many years with Vic Braden. I traveled with Vic doing this, that, and the other thing. And I can remember being at the US Open and Vic was just swamped, and people couldn't ask him a question, so they'd ask me questions. But you put a few of those workshops together so Vic was in the room and he saw our process where we skill test, and we're basically saying, hey, your kid can't hit the broadside of a barn. And we're feeding the ball underhand and hit your forehand volley in the service box. And, it's 13.5 by 21. You could put a couch, 2 big corner chairs, coffee table, big TV. But service box is a pretty large area. And Vic was so nice, but Vic would say, not in front of the kid, he would say, that kid's game, what game? He has no game. He'd be lucky to find the bathroom. Of course, what we were doing is just say, hey, you have no game. Not to make him feel bad, but it's like if you got a really poor reading level, say if you're in the 10th grade and you got a 2nd grade reading level. But I think another thing is start the course, stay the course. People don't circle back. I think people can leave a program, well, we're going to get better sparring partners. We're going to get on clay more. We're going to have a few more opportunities through another program, but you don't leave the curriculum.
Yeah, no, I've seen you do that multiple times. Like tell people, like, no, you should actually go to South America to play on red clay for the summer. Push them away when it's appropriate.
Right, but don't go somewhere where I know. Talk about Raven Clausen quite a bit. He spent so many years with us, and he's been on the podcast a couple of times. And when you're really in the know, and you've invested a lot of time, you're not going to change for the sake of change. The kids need to have a filtering system. I'm obviously talking about hockey all the time. Is that I would say that hockey people have a BS filter, but tennis people don't. And it starts early. I mean, people probably tire hearing this on the podcast, but you work and get better and better. You're 12 years old and you're in the Pee Wee division. What tournament? I'm in the Pee Wee division. In the hockey, the year before, you're in the squirt division. Seriously, I'm not making it up. I'm a squirt. And then, but tennis kids are, no, I'm in the high performance group. And, you talk about a process. You go to tennis clubs and they'll say, well, this is our high performance group. And it's not to make anybody feel bad, but I'm going, whoa, I don't see anything that even comes close to it looking like it's high performance. What are the solutions? Go ahead, Dave.
Well, I mean, on the tournament end, I mean, from the tournament end, obviously, to think about like uniformity or a merging of everything with, all the different the world ranking point now, pin number, and then the UTR, and then their USTA nationals. I mean, it would be great to just have a merger, but instead we went the other way. We split. We're like an old East Texas Church of Christ that, didn't agree. Some of the congregation didn't agree with vocals, and next thing you know, they split and go to another church without vocals, and that's kind of where tennis is. It seems too divided, and the parents, we talk about kids having feelings and emotions dictate things. I think tennis in the USTA is kind of run in a similar manner, where it's a little bit flavor of the month. You know, I think that the green dot and red ball and green ball and orange ball are the biggest example of how we just kind of copycat things, and good tools, but I think I believe we need a complete overhaul of the way that the junior tournament schedule and ranking system is. I don't know how that'll happen. I don't necessarily have a solution. But I just know this: if you don't have a lot of discretionary income or people that are helping you either at a club along the way, I don't see how people can do it. If they want to play the game according to the way this game is being played, you don't have to do it. People don't have to do it, but it's very, very hard to sell people on that fact now. Even if it just seems like the comparison is at an all-time high, people, have trouble staying the course of their own individual journey. They're only comparing to the little kid or little boy or girl who are doing better, and this is a really challenging journey that takes a lot of time. But the tournament thing is huge. I think from the education standpoint, I think it could be done as simply as the USTA adopting, GreatBase certification, GreatBase training throughout the country, and really getting behind it. And when we talk about 10 and under tennis all the time, and there you go. Okay, we have all these mandates for 10 and under tennis. Well, let's add one then. Let's make anybody that has anything to do with our 10 and under tennis going through the GreatBase certification. Add that on. Put another feather in everybody's hat. I think that could really impact tennis.
But, I was just in Hawaii. A lot of very, very nice people. I could say so many things about that trip. But I was at the Puno School. I mean, it is an amazing place. But a woman, nice woman. I forgot that Bernard Guzman, who was with Peter Burwash for a long, long time, was there for 20 plus years. So I talked to her about Bernard and the PBI, and there was this huge building right behind one of the courts. I mean, it's like a major campus, and it was a college campus at one time. And to digress, I went to the high school graduation, and it was just like a lifetime experience. So Yvonne Oseretz went out there with me. But anyway, there's a building. That's the kindergarten building. And I'm just going, that's where I know Jeff Lewis would love to be. It's like, we have a young 6-year-old here from an 8-year-old, a 7-year-old from Florida, New Jersey, and Michigan. That's where, from an instructional standpoint, Dave Fish, retired coach from Harvard. 2 problems in American tennis is instruction, and how can you regulate that? But then also too and that's why he put so much into tournaments. I should say so much effort into the UTR. But he said, you say it was instruction. Let me get right: instruction, and then the competitive format, which is tournaments.
Yeah.
My son Connor has so many stories. He was playing. He was up to win a national, gold ball level 1. He was up 5-love in the final set. He underhit, he overhit. Actually, he was with Carla Navarro and her brother Rodrigo. As a side story is, Connor called me up and said, "Gee, I'd like to stay in the hotel where all my buddies are." And I had to turn up the volume. I said, "The guy who's taking you to the tournaments and warming you up every day, he's got a win over Federer." Rodrigo, I think Rodrigo was 28. Federer won the Junior Wimbledon. He was ushered off to playing a futures where he had a wild card. And But I remember Mark Dixon, who became a very, very good player. That's a great story too. I really digress. He was, I think, 5. Played at Jesuit. He played at bottom of the lineup at Clemson. He just kept getting better and better. He was 32 in the world and had some wins over like Lendl and Vilas. As soon as he heard that, I said, "That's great." Vic Braden used to say, "Who's the person that you would not want to lose to?" And people, I just would not want to lose that person. And he goes, "That's the person you need to play. Just don't avoid that." Bill Tilden, tennis players are born out of defeat. So there's different stages, and I think that's where I know some kids. They haven't played high school tennis because they know they'd have to play challenge matches against other people that go to the same high school. They just avoid it. And what really should happen is they shouldn't be programmed out. They should, hey, let's play a set. Let's play a couple sets let's play a match every week, at least once a week. If you guys are in the same high school, hey, let's get together. I like what you said, Dave, one time. It takes an act of Congress to get two decent players from a local community to play one another.
Yeah, and to have it be where it's unsupervised, that takes a biblical miracle.
Yeah, I mean, no, and parents, I think certainly years ago, a lot of men, I mean, they would certainly be following the stock market. Now they don't follow the stock market. They follow, UTR. They know what everybody's doing, where everybody's going. And say, okay, I'm just going to play. I think one of the toughest things in tennis right now is to find practice matches, though. To get on the phone and call people up.
Yeah, we have today there were 2 senior versus kid matches. We have some great adult players here, and they really get a kick out of it. I've talked about Bruno, a Brazilian guy who, was a heck of a tennis player, but he's 52, 53, and he played a girl going out to the Big 12 to play at Colorado. She's, won national balls in the 18s, and I mean, I didn't ask to score, but I'm assuming he won, and he's 53, full-time pediatric neurosurgeon. I haven't seen him hit a ball in a month. He's on my 5-0 team. And then on the other side of the facility going on was another men's 5-0 player playing against a junior that came in. And I think those things are so valuable. And we held an event here for many years, Wisdom versus Wheels. And, it went away, and we need to bring it back. But we kind of keep it going. I mean, the adults know all they have to do is just shoot a text and say, can I get a match? And we organize it. But the kids don't do it. They won't do it. They won't offer to contact other kids, let alone an adult anymore.
Everybody knows. Everybody knows everybody's business now. And with college coaches traveling all over the globe looking for winners, people who've won, and not really even taking into consideration, the holes they have in their game, is that this kid has won. And the coaches are doing it at the college level. So the parents certainly know the coaches are doing that. And then the kids know they're doing that. So now the juniors they're going all over the globe. They're, I know a gentleman in Sweden. His parents are Swedish. He was raised in the U.S., but he makes a very good living. A great guy. He takes kids to places where they can have easier points to secure through the ITF. And that's that's one thing you could do. You could check on where everybody's going. And, I look at it and go, that kid's in the wrong place at the wrong time. But yeah, there's certainly ought to be said for it. In just getting better, there's the percentage of, if you could win, say 65% of your matches. I know my son Connor at one point, just because I had him, focusing on academics his last year in high school, and he was homeschooled working with a tutor, and now he was winning, 95% of matches that he was playing. So he's that obviously you get to that level, it's okay. I need to find tougher matches, but it wouldn't have been that difficult. But so many kids. He was ranked 2 in the 18s, so he's a very good tennis player, nationally ranked 2 in the 18s. But that doesn't mean he was 2. So you said earlier, so when he went to Kalamazoo, he certainly wasn't seeded 2, because how many kids are in the tournament that have ATP points? How many kids in the tournament have ITF points? And so I was one time at ITA, Intercollegiate Tennis Association workshop conference, and Claire Pollard from Northwestern. And I've done a few things with her over the years. She's 1 and 1 and 1. She came to one of her educational courses. She's recruited a few players, sent us a couple of players. This goes back years and years back. So I wasn't really saying anything at this round table. And she was saying, what is the solution? What one rule would you have? So she finally called upon me, and I'd said it'd be difficult to regulate, but if every college coach had to have at least 2 local players, I think college campuses should have their own junior development program. And like Ty Tucker, for example, it's like, hey, you gotta take your hat off to Ty. He hasn't won the big one yet. I know people are pulling for him to do that, but he's had a team in the top 5 for probably 20 years now. But the expression that he's put a fence around the state of Ohio, and he's given athletes opportunities, and really through hard work has had project players climb the ladder. So yeah, the rough and the dull, there are no shortcuts. But in other sports, you can't skip out. You can't say, well, I'm not playing local. If you're a football player, you're a basketball player, you're a volleyball player. Maybe you do so well where you get to the point where you're on an all-star selection team, but you play, you blossom where you're planted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, I think those 2 things, I've said this before on this podcast, is that, parents should boycott. The entry fees are going up, and the kids are playing less. They're playing no ad, sometimes consolation. Besides that 10-point tiebreaker, consolation matches are only to 4. And then the match tiebreaker is to 7. But then someone said, well, if the parents were to boycott, then some parents would be really happy because the tournaments would be easy. 64 10-year-olds play a tournament. Who wins? One 10-year-old. And all the way through, who wants to win? Everybody wants to win. The parent wants to win. The coach wants to win. The coach to save a 10-year-old, the 10-year-old. And what are they really winning? And where is it all headed? Where is it all headed? But I like what you said.
So that's the key, Steve. That's the key, is that, and Jeff said, you got to get better. Are you getting better? And is it's so confusing, because that doesn't equate to winning all the time. Sometimes it does, for sure, but the documented, pathway of getting better and playing the game like it's supposed to be played, or like it's going to be played when you do, if you're lucky to get down the road. And I don't think people think that way. They are very confused about what that whole thing looks like. And, it would be, if it's, solutions, for the USTA to put put you into a situation where they used you as a consultant and you were sent off to major metropolitan areas. And, it was mandatory. It was that program leaders of player development programs in those metropolitan areas, and the USTA has the resources to help fund it, so people don't lose revenue, whatever. And a powerful message, a powerful, truthful message, was consistently brought forth. It's not that difficult. It's just it's fighting through the bureaucracy to get the right kind of things done. That's difficult. Yeah. And in our cases, that bureaucracy sometimes is just the family unit. I
Yeah,
mean, we
100%.
ultimately, I mean, they can, the family unit at any given time can just fire us and walk. And, I think that it gets difficult as people are in positions like we are for many people. I get it to just be straight and tell it like it is. And it doesn't mean you say mean or whatever. It's just truthful. But the truth doesn't seem to be very palatable these days.
Yeah, no, I think, with these governing bodies, and, I find when you criticize them, people are like, well, it's up to us to grow the game, and we don't need them and that. And it's like, well, that's fine. But, I find not only are they what they're doing not to be really productive, but I also find they have these kind of figureheads and gatekeepers that are at the same time saying, no, no, this is how you develop players with these colored balls. They're also saying what they're doing is wrong. Like to me, they're actively disparaging what successful developmental coaches are doing. And to me, their number one job should be to go seek out successful developmental coaches that have consistently taken players from this level to these goals. And you just start researching. You just you do the research in what is making players rather than what's going to, try to make the most money or what programs are going to produce revenue. I think you can always dumb down things if you need to make them more commercialized or whatever you want to do. But I've always had a little bit of a beef with like, well, that's fine. I'm not going to do it your way, but you don't have to criticize the way I'm doing it either. Like, let me just prove myself and you do your thing, and whatever makes more sense, let the people do. But, yeah, no, 100%. I wish these governing bodies would put the research in and, I always compare it to internet marketing. If an ad for a men's sweater comes up and you click on it and it takes you to a pair of women's heels, you're not going to have much conversion. So marketing tennis is easy and quick to get into. You're going to get people that want something easy and quick, and they go in it, and then they're like, why do you think 90% of them drop out? Because they quickly realize that this is not an easy thing to be a part of. So you could market it as what it is, like a challenging, great lifetime sport that's mentally stimulating, and then you'll get those people, and now your conversion ratio goes up,
The word united. Several years ago, when the World Cup for soccer was played in the U.S., and obviously there's men and women, and so it was when the women were playing, I believe. It was many years ago. So, but there was discussions, and I listened to this, and soccer is a relatively new sport in the U.S. When I was a kid, it really wasn't played in the U.S. A little bit in St. Louis, a little bit in Boston, therefore New England, and then it exploded. And granted, the women have done well, really well. And we have a lot of foreign coaches that are over here now because so many people came over to play college soccer on scholarships. But one gentleman said, just have a pilot project where you just to take an area to try to prove, like, this is how, coming back to that Puno school and looking at that's a building of six-year-olds. That's where it needs to start.
Yeah,
no substitute for a good beginning. And, and also too, is that once people understand, technique, then they can understand tactics. I mean, it's just a wild, wild west. And I think also to be a tennis teacher, it's a 10-year apprenticeship. To be a player, it's certainly 10 years. And parents, if they can survive after 10 years, they're going to know a lot more. But I think there's a feeling of expertise among parents, among coaches too early on. Like they think they got a handle on it. But like we did that as a group in Memphis. I remember the people with Lifetime Fitness up, and they have like 8 clubs in Minneapolis. And they had talked to me, and I said, it was just exploratory. I said, I could do that. Is to go to an area, but they be united to get. In fact, the mom of a player we've worked with in Hawaii, she talked to a lot of people, and I think that was one of the themes of us going out to Hawaii is united. Could they people that are in that just Honolulu, small. I mean, it's just beautiful place. It's a good sized city, but overall, it's a small tennis community. And could you get people from this club and this school and with a great base, people don't do any research. they don't know. For example, today we're covering the Welby Van Horn balance system. That's just something that every tennis coach should be trained to do coming in because of the results, what he accomplished. And I actually thought about Welby, what he did on the island of Puerto Rico, and what's developed tennis wise in the island of Hawaii. There are several islands. You know, Jeff, we spent a lot of time. I know you were in charge of Vic Braden, Orlando, and for the longest time, people would say Orlando. People don't go there for tennis; they go there for Mickey. They're not. They're there for the Disney and all the other things that go around with that. But yeah, coming back to saying that to Claire Pollard is if we had to develop our own players. I'm all for somewhere I'm contradicting myself. I think it's great that there's foreign players over here. Where would we be without the foreign players? But at the same time, instead of complaining about the foreign players, we need to develop players to beat the foreign players. So we in the side of coaching junior tennis, we need to do a better job. Everybody needs to do a better job. But to just go out and buy your players and say, well, I've got a shop. I've got to go all over the world to find people to represent our university. But now kids, people are doing that. They're doing that to go to. They're doing that to go to academies. To go to these American kids are going to these commercial academies. Although Dave Secker, NC State, said Americans don't realize that Spanish kids don't go to Spanish academies. And if they do, it's kind of like the old Nick Bollettieri. I mean, there's two groups. There's the group that I love what Nick did in so many ways, but this is the group that's on scholarship. It's like a courier. He worked at Harry Hopman's. He was scholarshiped at Harry Hopman's before he was scholarshiped at Nick Bollettieri's. But anyway, let's have a couple of closing comments on this with competitive junior tennis. Why don't you go first, Jeff?
Yeah, the first thing that came into my mind was just when you're talking about that, college coaching and community and exposure. I wonder what the relationship is to these programs getting dropped when they run out of money from how many kids are from the area that are in the program. If you have a local kid, when it comes to alumni money, getting money to keep your program versus a foreign kid that comes in, is there 4 years, leaves, moves somewhere else versus having a third generation kid from your state or city in your program. I feel like.
No, that's a great point. It's the fact that most foreign players do not dedicate monies from their professional career back to where they went to school.
Yeah. So, if you want to keep your programs, get involved in your community, give kids exposure, put up a little pop-up stand at your matches, get kids there to watch the camaraderie between your college players, give back to your community, help teach your community. I think it could have very positive effects in the long run. You can see have enough foresight.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, the words competitive junior tennis, you compete against yourself. Champions create their own environment. As you said, blossom in the area where you are. I think that, most people, I think they have this grandiose vision of they're not at Texas or UCLA or somewhere, Florida, or that they're not really playing college tennis. And Heliovar and Patton, and there are just numerous stories of people that have had to go in the back door and made it to pro. But, the pro game will call for you. People are thinking that, the saying the words, I'm going to play pro tennis, and then that's it. And there's just so much that has to happen, and learning to become competitive. I loved what you said, Steve, about every day's a tournament. I mean, it really is. And we are lucky to have a full-time, sports psychologist here that's also a tennis person. But when she first got here and asked me for a couple of players, I've said this before, what are the performance goals for this next quarter for this person? I said, I want them to pack their lunch, and I want them to make their bed, and then I want to do 50 push-ups when they wake up and go to sleep. It still hasn't been done, and it's been a year and a half. And, I told the parents, I said, I don't care. Don't come to me with any term, results or moaning and groaning or anything. I mean, just get this right. And there's such a correlation between self-discipline and achievement. And I think that, to me, that's what the GreatBase has always been about. I mean, that's fortunately when I, came across you, Steve. I mean, I think I always had a good work ethic and some great things, but I really got harnessed in on, I think, self-discipline and work ethic. And when you put those things into your life, I mean, you start worrying less about all these little things that don't matter, and you start taking care of your, you control your controllables each and every day, and good things just are inevitable. And I think that's what parents need to realize is their role. We don't want to exercise them out of the tennis scene with their child. We want to make it an all-inclusive three-legged stool. But getting your kid to have great lifetime skills is, to me, far and above the hardest role. And I think that's where the emphasis should be, and great pride put on that from a parental end. And but sometimes, I'm involved in just too many unnecessary conversations about technical things, trying to explain to the parent. And, I think it's important they know, but at the same time, I said, listen, if I have an extra 20 minutes, I'd rather pump balls to your kid. Because getting one player down the road is tough, and getting the parents just to, understand that they could be hugely impactful in the child's life just by getting them to have a little bit greater, control of these things that really will ultimately lead them to success down the road anyways, when they do have to set their rackets down and show up and have a boss yelling at them.
No, my new favorite thing to do is just when a kid who plays once a week comes up to me and he starts talking about his grip on his bottom hand, I just show him like a video of Cam Norrie's backhand. And I'm like,
Yeah.
kid, that's the least of your problems right now.
Yeah.
With Cam Norrie,
Exactly.
meaning that he's such a great fighter, but that's
You got everything else, a little open on, a lot open on the backhand side, but it, sometimes I think, especially in our circle, kids become a little bit of technique snobs, and it's like,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
and I feel like sometimes they also have academia parents, which feel like it's just, no, you just figure it out. It's just this intellectual pursuit, 100%. You just got to figure out how to hit a backhand. It's like,
one thing with Cam Norrie, first time I ever saw him play, I made a tape for Matt Clore. At time, Matt's back at the UCA, but Matt was coaching Mackenzie McDonald. We were watching McDonald play on TV. He was playing Monfils. And, you could take him, you could say, well, if we could turn the clock back, you could take it back to the drawing board, but what a great competitor. But I think it goes this way. He was born in South Africa, raised in New England, schooled in the U.S., and he plays for Great Britain. So he's a pretty worldly guy, but just a great competitor.
yeah.
Great competitor. And I think actually knowing the backstory too. But let me say this as we sign off. But stories, I think Jeff is 44. I met him when maybe 14, so it's close to 30 years, one way or the other. And Dave, 10 years longer than that. Let's go with, tell us about a gentleman who showed up here today with his young daughter. And I said, hey, told Yvonne, I said, just have him shadow Jeff because Jeff's only here for a few days. And he's all over. He's done your courses. Tell us, named after Vic Braden. Tell us about your what you're doing to try to help tennis.
Well, I mean, victorytennisprograms.com. I just, again, right now, I mean, if you just go to the homepage, it's just like for adults looking to learn tennis, there's paid courses. But if you just go to the courses page, my piece de resistance is my free teaching kids tennis class or teaching kids tennis course that I put together. Yeah. It's great. We got, I just did tennis lessons for a year in an underserved area of Little Rock, and I just mic'd myself up and I filmed everything, and I made, like 16 weeks of lesson plans of these kids from starting in a church in a closed, very confined area, getting them started to making our way to a court where you had kids stroking the ball pretty well. So just, I just documented it and they wanted to be a part of it. So it's very cool. And then I have other, just other parts that's a free resource that comes with it. But then there's just like fun stuff on, how to be a tennis pro, just basics, and then the checkpoints are there that I'm sure many people are familiar with, and some group dynamic stuff. Just, it's the same thing. But
how about the fun videos like Noah Atala?
Coach Noah Dalla isn't around anymore. It's Hugh Pompous now.
Hugh Pompous,
the new guy.
Those are funny.
I got to get some more of those in the works, but it's not just.
But that's all through. How do you get to it again?
Jeff Lewis Tennis would be good for that on YouTube, but also I have 2 YouTube channels: Victory Tennis Programs and Jeff Lewis Tennis. Search either of those things, and you'll find some cool stuff, I think.
I'm always I get a kick out of it when people ask me, "Do you know Jeff Lewis?" I go, "Yeah, I know Jeff." With Dave, about Andres does it for you. I know a lot of people tell us about how people can. I know they could come and work with you at Brookhaven in Dallas, but tell us about what you do through the internet, Instagram. I think Andres does it, right?
Yeah, I've never made a post. He does a great job of putting it together. He's trying to do the best he can with maintaining consistency. But that's really a realm I'm not that familiar with. He started a YouTube channel as well. But it's, like Jeff said, when you're mic'd up, sometimes, you got to watch your mouth. And it depends on, the topics and how riled up things are. But no, Brookhaven Tennis Academy. I mean, I'm proud to say I still don't have business cards or anything. I have them, but I don't know where they are. But Andres does a good job. I mean, he's in an era. He gets the impact we can have, and he showed me one video that we posted of George and a few other people. And he said that got 20,000 views, and I said, I just couldn't believe it, But I think that there's good in that, and that also is the scary part, right? Because there is a lot out there, and I would say that the things with substance are the minority in what's out there. There are definitely some very good educational sites like Jeff's and online tennis and
Tennis Intelligence Applied next year will be 20 years old, and maybe that's why people are saying it's old school.
Oh gosh!
Don't look at that.
But by the way, if you've made it this far in the podcast, just email me. Any of the paid stuff on victorytennisprograms.com, just contact me through the website and I'll just add you to it. You don't have to actually pay for it. Because if you made it this far in the podcast, man, you are special.
But no, thanks for that, Jeff. Dave and Jeff, thanks for being on the podcast. We hope, what we always say is that with your tennis treasure chest, that we've at least come up with 1 or 2 golden nuggets. But how you definitely can come up with some gold nuggets is just look at Jeff's work online or Dave's work online. But thanks again, everyone, and adios, amigos.
Yeah. I have to go to the bathroom.
Okay, have a great night. Thanks for having me.
Jeff has to go to the bathroom, everyone.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, Dave.
See you later. You bet. See you later. Bye-bye.